Last week was the yahrzeit of Harel Sharvit. It was a week from yesterday, but we didn't get together then. Who was Harel Sharvit? He was the son of Rabbi Sharvit, our neighbor, and he fell in Gaza. I think due to some sort of accident. It was like the tank pulled down a power line and took down something else. I don't know exactly. So Rabbi Sharvit was then sit in observing Shloshim. For a person who passed away with no children, the Avelis is over at Shloshim. Avelis for a year is only for the children of the deceased. There's no such thing as a year of Avelis for a particular person if he doesn't have children to observe that Avelis. And Rabbi Sharvit's other surviving sons had then a bunch of sanctions imposed on them directly by the Brandon administration. Machon, thank God they're no longer. Right? You remember this? Yeah, so they couldn't do their banking. They're violent settlers who are causing all sorts of problems, so they can't use their bank accounts anymore. But they're not American citizens. They don't even speak English. They've never been to America. They've never been on airplanes before. How will the Brandon administration, Yimach Shemam, affect their finances? The answer, because they tell them the Israeli banks can't do business with the Sharvit family or else. Okay? And the Israeli banks don't want to lose their access to whatever global banking they need to do. So they went ahead with this. And then they imposed sanctions on the rest of our neighbors. Okay? So there you go. It really wasn't fair. And I thank God, and I have to thank President Trump for removing these things. He did this on day one, like the first few minutes. He did this to a bunch of other people. He continued this lie of the violent extremist settler and punishing them without any due process, by the way. Yet you still have people who are friends, supporters. I don't know why. And we also learned that you have to hold on to Eretz Yisrael because none of this war would have happened if we hadn't had the Oslo and the disengagement and the rest of them. Well, the only thing that really matters is what God says, and a basic examination of the sources shows that we're simply not listening to what God wants us to do on the general scale. So that's not so good. I made a prediction that Trump would be thrown in jail, so that didn't come true either. I saw haters on the internet saying, "Oh, yeah, you should just stop predicting anything," which is kind of funny because my major predictions came true. And we like to repost the videos, where I said these things. So it's okay to make a few major predictions about the Israeli elections and the way the war went. And thank you very much. I think I was the first one. The timestamp on my video was the 16th of October, 2023. And it was pretty good, so I don't know. And when you concede your mistakes, you just get more hate. Last week, we were canceled because it was Tidhar Gozlan's funeral. So there was a young man who passed away in a motorcycle accident on the Yishuv, also without children, like 3 years ago. And then Harel Sharvit passed away last year. And last week, on the same day, basically about the same day, the Rosh Kollel's son was killed in a farming vehicle accident. He was plowing with some sort of, they say a tractor, which means a type of bulldozer like the thing, but he's just using it to plow. And somehow or other it tipped over. Heavy machinery, and he ended up underneath it. So the young man was, I think, only 20, and that basically canceled what? 21. Yes. So it was a pretty big tragedy here. And here's the joke, because this family and the surrounding friends epitomized Judaism. Okay, what does the Rosh Kollel do? Well, he supports the local base medrash. That's all. It's his one-man project, and the equivalent of Tomchei Shabbos is run by him. And his sons are in charge of they're the ones who are the hilltop youth, the ones who are actually trying to hold on to the land of Israel, right? And they're fighting off the brutal savages, and they're unarmed, basically. They're not allowed to have firearms, so they have to arm themselves with sticks and stones. And they're the ones who are taking the most heat, just like the Sharvits, who are also a family that epitomizes Judaism, the cream of humanity. That's them. And we're not talking about people who are wealthy. We're talking about people who are humble by their very nature. They're the models of Torah, Chesed, and dedication to the land, and that's why they're the most persecuted by the regime, which is kind of funny. So if they can't catch a break, so it was most unfortunate. And that's why I thank God Trump destroyed the sanctions, but he still wants, which is kind of weird. He and Brandon last week were fighting over who takes the blame for setting up the surrender that happened last week and also sets up the next round. You saw that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So following the news. So Rabbi Weissman made a joke. Next time the IDF will give the Arabs 16 hours of being too surprised to react to whatever it is they do. That's part of the deal of the ceasefire. You heard that? No? Okay. So Shiva ended this morning for Tidhar, the young Gozlan boy, and it's almost a joke. Like you see, these are the people that across the world they bash, the Jews who suffer the most lies and slanders. And last Thursday afternoon, we found that Uncle Soy had passed away in New York Thursday morning, and his Shiva ended also this morning. Uncle Soy is my father's surviving brother, his last brother. Uncle Soy was 86 years old, just a few months shy of his 87th birthday. He was always in a good mood, despite he was mostly a leftist, I think. He was Orthodox, but also, and he never really spoke anything out loud, but never agreed with anything that he might have said. But he kept his opinions to himself. And he liked to play with children. He was a very funny guy. He was the one my daughters refer to as the Matzchik. Okay? And he lived through a lot of history. He was born before the war, World War II that was. He saw a lot. He eventually became a federal officer. He had originally chosen as, I think, a career in computers. But in the mid-90s already, I think he was basically 60 years old or something like that. He was already out of, not in touch with the computer thing, and he changed careers. He became a customs and immigrations officer. You know what that means? It's like federal police type of thing. And he worked at the airport. And suddenly Uncle Soy went off to basic training in Georgia and came back in better shape and wearing a uniform and carrying a gun. And it was pretty cool. And he continued working at the airport until his retirement sometime. I don't know how long he continued working after that. But it was pretty significant. And at his funeral, there was an honor guard. Federal officers showed up in full uniform with the hats and everything, and armed, and did a whole salute. And they played taps, and they had the whole take off the flag and fold it, and everything like that, and present the flag to the widow, my aunt. And it was pretty impressive. I've seen that ceremony before, but I didn't hear playing the taps. And that was for a World War II veteran. So Uncle Soy wasn't a veteran of a war, but and thank God he never saw armed combat. But apparently, they gave him, the full send off. So his memory should be for a blessing, and it's a shame we didn't have a good chance to say a proper goodbye.